A few years ago, I walked into an exhibit at the Boca Raton Museum of Art, and I traveled back 600 years. Then everything pulled me into another world. The sounds, the lighting, the statues, everything pulled me into a world that disappeared 5 centuries ago and yet felt completely alive. And standing there, surrounded by the evidence of an entire civilization's genius, I had a realization that changed the way I think about landscape architecture forever. The Incas didn't conquer the mountain, they listened to it. And what they built at Machu Picchu is not just one of the most extraordinary archaeological sites in the world, it is the most sophisticated act of landscape architecture in human history. Machu Picchu sits at 7,972 feet above sea level in the Peruvian Andes, on a narrow ridge between 2 mountain peaks, with the Urubamba River wrapping around its base nearly 2,000 feet below. To modern eyes, the location seems impossibly dramatic, almost irrational. Why here? Why build an entire city on top of a remote mountain ridge exposed to wind and clouds far from the agricultural valleys below? The answer is that the Incas didn't choose this location despite its challenges. They chose it because of them. The dramatic geography, the orientation to the sun and stars, the relationship between earth and sky, all of it was intentional and profoundly designed. Machu Picchu was not placed on the landscape. It grew from it. The Incas knew that a mountain at this altitude receives enormous rainfall, and that without intervention, that water would destabilize everything. So they designed over 130 drainage channels, fountains, and canals that moved water through the entire city in a continuous, controlled flow. A system so precisely engineered that it still functions perfectly today. They built over 700 agricultural terraces, not just for farming, but as retaining walls filled with layers of gravel, sand, and topsoil that anchored the entire site to the mountain and prevented it from collapsing under the weight of the city above. 2 engineering solutions, water and earth, working together so seamlessly that for 600 years no wall has shifted, no foundation has failed, and no stone has moved out of place. Modern engineers have studied this site and reached a humbling conclusion. We could not replicate this precision today. But Machu Picchu was never just an engineering achievement. It was a spiritual one. The Incas called their relationship with the landscape Pachamama, Mother Earth, and at Machu Picchu, that relationship is written into every stone. The Intihuatana stone is a carved granite ritual stone, aligned precisely to the movements of the sun. At the winter solstice, the sun sits directly above it with no shadow, connecting the physical world to the spiritual one. The temple of the sun is oriented so that at the summer solstice, the first rays of sunrise pass through a trapezoidal window and illuminate a specific stone on the altar below. An astronomical precision that required an intimate understanding of how light moves across this specific mountain at this specific latitude. The Incas didn't impose their sacred geometry onto the landscape. They read the landscape and let it dictate their geometry. The mountain told them where to build, and they listened. And then, sometime in the late 15th century, they left. Machu Picchu was abandoned, and the jungle slowly reclaimed it, covering the terraces and buildings in vegetation until the site was invisible from below. For nearly 400 years it sat there, known only to local communities, until 1911, when American explorer Hiram Bingham arrived, guided by a local farmer named Melchor Arteaga, a fact that history conveniently forgot for most of the 20th century. Bingham called it a discovery. But there were already people living there when he arrived. Why was it abandoned? Historians believe a smallpox epidemic devastated the Inca population before the Spanish even arrived. But the mountain keeps its final secret, silent and unchanged, exactly as it has been for 600 years. Machu Picchu teaches us things about landscape architecture that we are only beginning to rediscover. The most intelligent design begins with listening to the land, to the water, to the light. The Incas spent generations observing this mountain before they built a single wall, and that patient observation is what made everything possible. Infrastructure and beauty are not separate things. The drainage channels and agricultural terraces of Machu Picchu are simultaneously engineering solutions and breathtaking landscape elements, and perhaps most urgently, a civilization's relationship with its landscape is a reflection of its values. The Incas believed the mountain was alive, sacred, and deserving of respect. In a world of climate crisis and ecological collapse, that philosophy feels less like ancient wisdom and more like the most modern idea we have. Landscape architecture is more than stone and earth. It is the manifestation of our history, our controversies, and our healing. On this channel, we believe that every iconic landscape, from a solemn memorial to an ancient citadel, holds a secret, a hidden narrative underneath its surface. Our mission is to excavate those truths because we are convinced that real history, with all its complexity, pain, and beauty, is always more interesting and more important than legend. For architects, landscape architects, urban planners, design enthusiasts, and anyone who loves public spaces, if you believe that the spaces we build define who we are, join our community. Thank you for following us. I'm Raisa Molina, and this is Landscape Architecture Legends. See you in the next story.